She laughed in my face and said, "You don't have the balls to confront me." I served divorce papers during her promotion speech, and she collapsed like a defendant hearing a verdict she never saw coming. I'm Daniel Mitchell, 42 years old, and for 15 years I believed my marriage to Rebecca was built on the same foundation as my legal career: systematic preparation and unwavering commitment to justice. We lived in a restored federal colonial in Greenwich, Connecticut, the kind of property that whispers generational success through hand-carved crown molding and period details that I'd personally researched and restored to historical authenticity. I worked as senior partner at Mitchell and Associates, specializing in high-stakes corporate litigation and matrimonial asset protection for Connecticut's wealthiest families. Rebecca managed strategic partnerships for Sterling Marketing Group, coordinating campaigns and corporate events for Fortune 500 executives who valued both results and absolute discretion. To our professional network, we were the power couple who had mastered both career excellence and domestic sophistication. To me, we were partners building something permanent through shared values and complementary expertise. To Rebecca, as I was about to discover, we were apparently just sophisticated cover for her real strategic alliances. My corporate litigation background teaches you that the most dangerous adversaries are those who exploit legitimate access to manipulate systems from within, using trust as their primary weapon against the very people they're supposed to protect. The red flags in my marriage accumulated like suspicious transactions in a forensic audit, each one small enough to rationalize individually, but devastating when analyzed with systematic precision. February brought Rebecca's sudden fascination with my court schedule, asking detailed questions about trial dates and settlement negotiations with curiosity that seemed supportive rather than strategic intelligence gathering. She'd mentioned how impressed she was by my dedication to destroying opposing parties through systematic legal warfare, always positioning herself as the understanding spouse who appreciated aggressive competitive tactics. March introduced weekend strategy retreats at exclusive resorts, always coinciding with my most demanding litigation periods, when I'd be working 18-hour days preparing for trials that could determine the distribution of millions in corporate assets. April saw the introduction of mysterious client consultations she'd take in private offices, speaking in hushed tones about campaign strategies and partnership negotiations that required extensive confidential discussion. When I offered to review contracts together using my legal expertise to identify potential vulnerabilities, she'd explain that high-end marketing required discretionary protocols that made sharing client strategies inappropriate before campaigns launched. May brought the dead bedroom situation that developed like systematic jury tampering, gradual, methodical, designed to achieve specific outcomes without triggering defensive responses. Rebecca always had legitimate reasons for avoiding intimacy: exhaustion from demanding Fortune 500 clients, stress from complex campaign negotiations, hormonal fluctuations that killed her desire for physical connection. But she had endless energy for client entertainment events, partnership conferences, and strategy sessions that somehow never generated measurable career advancement despite months of professional development investment. June introduced Marcus Sterling, a creative director who existed only in carefully edited professional stories. She'd mention him casually, always in business contexts, describing him as a specialist helping her navigate high-end client relationships and complex campaign strategies. Looking back, I realized she was conditioning me to accept his presence in her professional communications, making him seem boring and technical rather than exciting and dangerous. July brought client networking events at exclusive venues, always coinciding with my federal court appearances when I'd be completely unavailable for verification or participation. The breaking point came at the annual Connecticut Bar Association Charity Gala, a black-tie tradition where the state's legal and corporate elite gathered to celebrate philanthropic achievement while conducting serious business over champagne and strategic networking. Rebecca had been particularly animated that evening, discussing market strategies with federal judges' wives and corporate executives while I reviewed case notes on my phone, preparing for Tuesday's Supreme Court oral arguments in a landmark intellectual property dispute that would set precedent for years. The conversation at our table revolved around aggressive litigation tactics, recent precedent-setting victories, and the complex world of high-stakes legal warfare. When the discussion turned to corporate battles involving systematic opponent destruction, I offered insights about forensic methodologies used to identify and exploit adversary weaknesses, drawing on my expertise in legal warfare that had generated hundreds of millions in value for my clients through strategic enemy elimination. But Rebecca's reaction was swift and devastatingly public. She laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound that cut through the elegant atmosphere like a hostile verdict announcement. "Oh, Daniel, you and your systematic legal theories," she said loud enough for nearby tables to pause their conversations. "Honestly, darling, sometimes I think you threaten litigation instead of actually fighting. Real corporate warfare requires courage, aggression, someone who understands what it means to take risks and destroy opponents, rather than just threaten them with paperwork." Her words carried the condescension of someone addressing a prosecutor who didn't understand battlefield realities, delivered with theatrical precision for an audience of legal professionals who now viewed me as either overly cautious or professionally impotent. The humiliation was surgical and calculated, designed to undermine my credibility in front of colleagues whose respect I'd spent decades earning through systematic opponent destruction. But what came next would destroy everything between us forever. As I sat in stunned silence, processing the public execution of my aggressive litigation approach, Rebecca leaned closer with the confidence of someone who believed she held absolute immunity. "You don't have the balls to confront me anyway, Daniel," she whispered with casual cruelty that cut deeper than any adverse ruling. "Face reality, you're a corporate litigator who can't even manage his own personal disputes. You spend your days threatening other people's opponents while getting outmaneuvered in your own domestic battles. You're too comfortable, too predictable, too weak to ever actually fight when it matters most." The words hit like a series of adverse rulings cascading through every level of appeal. She just dismissed 15 years of marriage, my legal expertise, and my fundamental worth as a competitor while surrounded by Connecticut's legal establishment. But in that moment of complete professional and personal humiliation, something fundamental shifted in my prosecutorial mindset. The pain, the shock, the disbelief began crystallizing into something colder and infinitely more strategic. Rebecca had just challenged a corporate litigator who specialized in systematic opponent destruction to demonstrate decisive legal action, while conducting what I was beginning to suspect was systematic personal betrayal disguised as legitimate business networking. The emotional husband recused himself in that moment. The corporate litigator had just been retained for the most important case of my career, and Rebecca had no idea that her comfortable, predictable husband was about to employ the same systematic destruction techniques I used to eliminate opposing parties in billion-dollar legal wars. She wanted to see if I had the balls to confront her. She was about to discover that the most dangerous confrontations are the ones that happen in public, with witnesses, and with evidence that destroys reputations permanently. The humiliation of that charity gala didn't break me. It activated something infinitely more dangerous than wounded pride. The moment Rebecca's dismissive laughter echoed through the Connecticut Bar Association ballroom, witnessed by the state's legal elite, I stopped being her husband and became her opposing counsel. At 4:42 a.m. the next morning, while she slept like someone who confuses good theater for good strategy, I transformed my home office into a litigation war room that would have impressed federal prosecutors preparing complex RICO cases. I opened a fresh matter in our firm's system, Mitchell v. Mitchell Internal, and began chain of custody video documentation, date, time, device serials, room panorama, my voice steady and methodical. The husband stepped back. The litigator took the file. I mirrored her iCloud and phone backups from the family iPad she'd carelessly left on my desk, capturing message archives, call logs, location data, wallet passes, even Apple keychain entries. Every screenshot was labeled, hashed, and cross-referenced to original metadata with forensic precision that would survive the most aggressive cross-examination. What I discovered was not sloppy indiscretion, but systematic operational deception written in digital breadcrumbs. Message threads with MS, Marcus Sterling, stretch back 8 months. His name studiously avoided, but his initials stitched across hotel reservations, car services, and late ideation sessions. Calendar invites labeled vendor alignment, matched precisely with AMX charges at luxury venues that don't open for breakfast meetings. Location data contradicted her alibis in half the places she claimed to be conducting business. Then I found the smoking gun, a voice memo she'd titled Pitch Cadence that contained not presentation rehearsal but a whispered corridor conversation. Rebecca's voice: "He'll never confront me directly. He threatens everyone else's opponents, never me." A male chuckle followed, "Then let him keep negotiating with himself while we handle real business." The casual contempt in her tone, discussing my professional capabilities like a performance review, crystallized every doubt I'd been rationalizing for months. By 7:10 a.m., I was sliding an encrypted drive across Aliner Park's mahogany desk. Aliner was our firm's quiet scalpel, the attorney opposing counsel feared most because she never raised her voice, never lost composure, and never showed mercy when building cases for total destruction. She plugged in the drive, scrolled through the evidence for 4 minutes, then pushed a legal pad toward me and began dictating with surgical precision. Emergency application for temporary restraining order on all marital accounts. Lease pendants on the house and lake cottage. Preservation order on respondents' devices. Demand letters to Sterling Marketing HR regarding fraternization policies, corporate exposure, and reputational risk. Notice to venue counsel that service will occur during the promotion event. Draft complaint citing adultery, dissipation of marital assets, and constructive fraud. Attach the prenuptial bad acts addendum. That addendum, drafted 13 years ago when love was loud and I was still superstitious about protecting happiness, would now convert Rebecca's infidelity into forfeiture of alimony, shifting of attorney fees, and a devastating swing in asset distribution. She'd rolled her eyes when signing it. "You'll never need this, litigator." Now it would be her financial execution warrant. While Alina handled court filings, I expanded the investigation through Patricia Chen, our forensic analyst. "Treat this like a trade secret case," I instructed. "I want a timeline that makes denial physically impossible." Within hours, Patricia had correlated messages to building access logs, Uber receipts to hotel charges, and business dinners to romantic restaurant reservations. Digital forensics revealed that Rebecca had been systematically documenting her own deception through expense reports that proved intimate relationships while claiming professional services. The breakthrough that would ensure complete destruction came when Patricia discovered Marcus Sterling's background: multiple professional violations, pending litigation for client manipulation, and most importantly, a marriage to Dr. Sarah Sterling, a forensic psychologist who'd been quietly building her own comprehensive case against Marcus's pattern of professional misconduct. I arranged a consultation with Dr. Sterling, positioning it as research for corporate litigation involving psychological manipulation. Her reaction was strategically satisfied rather than surprised. "Marcus targets ambitious women with substantial resources," she explained with clinical authority. "He exploits career insecurities while positioning himself for systematic extraction of professional and financial benefits. Rebecca represents his most sophisticated long-term operation." Our alliance formed around shared betrayal and complementary expertise. Dr. Sterling possessed clinical authority, institutional knowledge of Marcus's manipulation tactics, and psychological profiles explaining systematic relationship fraud. I brought legal firepower, comprehensive evidence, and litigation expertise that could transform their affair into criminal referrals and professional destruction. Meanwhile, I called HR counsel for Sterling Marketing with the kind of conversation corporate lawyers actually fear: the table of contents of a brewing scandal. "Your newest VP candidate is conducting an intimate relationship with a creative director at a competing agency," I explained, "with evidence of after-hours access violations and potential client confidentiality breaches. I'll be serving matrimonial papers during her promotion event. You'll want employment counsel present. Corporate fear isn't moral, it's actuarial. They thank me the way pilots thank windshear alerts." The perfect venue presented itself through Rebecca's own strategic planning. Her promotion ceremony to Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Sterling Marketing's annual Corporate Excellence Awards. She'd spent months curating this event, inviting 500 guests including federal judges, Fortune 500 executives, and Connecticut's legal establishment. The venue was perfect for systematic destruction. Public enough for comprehensive witness testimony, prestigious enough that her entire professional network would attend, and formal enough that service of process would create maximum professional devastation. Alina obtained ex parte orders freezing joint credit lines, restraining transfers above $5,000, and compelling preservation of all devices. The prenuptial agreement's bad acts clause activated like constitutional law, converting 15 years of marriage into a liability rather than an asset for Rebecca. As the promotion ceremony approached, I realized Rebecca's casual challenge about my lack of courage had triggered the most comprehensive matrimonial warfare campaign in Connecticut legal history. The comfortable, predictable husband she dismissed as too weak to fight was about to demonstrate that the most dangerous confrontations are conducted by corporate litigators who appear harmless, while possessing systematic capabilities to destroy sophisticated opponents through legal precision. That evening, I dressed in midnight navy, the suit I wear when juries lean toward me, and placed the original summons and complaint in the hands of a process server I'd used since the first time someone said "you'll never," and I answered with a docket number. Rebecca wanted to see if I had the balls to confront her. She was about to discover that confrontation isn't volume, it's presence plus paper, delivered at the moment of maximum professional vulnerability with witnesses who matter most. Alina Park and Dr. Sarah Sterling transformed our shared commitment to systematic opponent destruction into precision legal warfare, combining matrimonial litigation expertise with forensic psychology to build an irrefutable case that would dismantle Rebecca and Marcus's operations with surgical accuracy. Our final coordination took place in Alina's corner office, where Connecticut's most complex corporate divorces had been won through systematic evidence presentation and flawless timing. The documentation we compiled was devastating. 8 months of digital evidence proving systematic adultery, fraudulent expense reports documenting financial misconduct, and psychological profiles explaining Marcus's manipulation tactics with clinical precision that would survive any cross-examination. The Sterling Marketing Corporate Excellence Awards dressed itself like a coronation. The Metropolitan Club's glass towers reflected dusk like polished trophies, burgundy carpet ran the length of the lobby, and at the far end of the ballroom, a 12-foot LED wall scrolled names of sponsors and honorees in pristine white. Rebecca's promotion ceremony to Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships was her professional masterpiece, meticulously curated to showcase her leadership before 500 guests including federal judges, Fortune 500 executives, and Connecticut's legal establishment. I coordinated with the club's event manager, whose family trust I'd successfully defended against predatory litigation, securing discrete positioning for process servers while ensuring perfect timing that would maximize legal impact during Rebecca's moment of greatest professional vulnerability. Eleanor positioned herself at the rear center aisle, process server at her elbow, file jackets under her arm like a pharmacist bringing measured doses of truth. Dr. Sarah Sterling took a seat 2 rows behind me, calm as a waiting room, ready to validate Marcus's manipulation playbook if anyone tried to rewrite the plot. HR counsel and the general counsel, forewarned about potential corporate exposure, stood near the stage wings with neutral faces and tight hands, the way pilots look when weather is legal but unkind. Rebecca floated through the cocktail reception in silver satin and executive posture, a woman who had rehearsed this night in mirrors and elevator doors for months. She moved with practiced confidence, greeting industry leaders, while remaining completely unaware that her systematic deception had been documented with litigation-quality precision. The MC's teleprompter glowed with the words she wanted to hear more than she'd heard, "I love you," in years. Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, Rebecca Mitchell. The awards moved with choreographed efficiency. Community impact, rising star, client retention. I watched Rebecca's smile calibrate to each camera, 16 frames per second of curated warmth, and thought of her dismissive laughter about my lack of courage. The MC took a breath that told the teleprompter to scroll. Our final recognition this evening, a leader whose vision redefined how brands build relationships. The lights tightened, the room inhaled, and $1,000 of string quartet slid into a major key. Please welcome to the stage Senior Vice President Rebecca Mitchell. She rose to applause built from favors and expectations, took the steps like she owned gravity, and accepted the glass obelisk with hands that did not shake. She touched the lectern the way litigators touch a jury rail, then leaned into the microphone with the poise of someone who believed the future was a script with her name in bold. "Thank you," she began, and the room silenced the way good rooms do. "Leadership is courage," she said, "the willingness to confront difficult truths and act decisively when integrity demands action." The irony was almost too generous of her to tee up so cleanly. Tonight we celebrate not just professional success, but the ethical foundation that makes strategic partnerships possible. I stepped into the center aisle at Eleanor's slight nod. The process server moved with courthouse economy, a single manila envelope in his left hand, service card and body camera in his breast pocket, statute citations memorized like a psalm. He reached the foot of the stage by Rebecca's third sentence about trust-based relationships and stood at the edge of her spotlight. She saw him the way a driver sees a reflection of blue in a rearview mirror, confusion first, then context. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said in the voice process servers used to make the world official. The microphone amplified her inhale. "Yes. You are served," he said, setting the summons and complaint on the lectern beside her glass award in the matter of Mitchell v. Mitchell, Connecticut Superior Court. There is a physical law at moments like this. Sound exits first, blood second. Applause frayed into whispers, then into something softer, a velvet hiss, while Rebecca's eyes scanned the caption, then the first page, then the exhibit tabs that multiplied like mirrors in a funhouse. Eleanor handed HR counsel a letter of notice. Fraternization policies, conflict exposure, reputational risk, and the general counsel's jaw engaged exactly once. "We will take a brief pause," the MC said, already shrinking behind the podium, already remembering this wasn't his fight. Rebecca tried the pivot that works in smaller rooms. "This is completely inappropriate for this venue," she said toward the microphone, aiming control into the crowd like scent. But Eleanor stepped forward with prosecutorial authority that transformed the elegant ballroom into an impromptu courtroom. "Mrs. Mitchell," Eleanor announced with clinical precision, "you are served with divorce papers citing systematic—" The silence following Rebecca's collapse stretched across the Metropolitan Club ballroom like a verdict being rendered, absolute and irreversible. 500 guests, Connecticut's corporate and legal establishment, processed the systematic matrimonial warfare they'd just witnessed while Rebecca remained crumpled beside the lectern, her silver satin gown pooled around her like evidence of a crime scene. The woman who dismissed my courage while accepting recognition for ethical leadership had just discovered that challenging a corporate litigator to demonstrate decisive action while conducting systematic adultery was the most expensive professional miscalculation she could make. Sterling Marketing's general counsel materialized beside the stage with HR personnel, their coordinated response revealing corporate damage control protocols activating in real time. The CEO approached a leaner with the measured urgency of someone calculating reputational costs, while his communications director whispered into a headset, already drafting press releases that would distance the company from their newly promoted VP's spectacular legal implosion. Rebecca was helped to a chair while medics checked her vitals, the glass award forgotten beside the summons that had ended her professional coronation. Federal Judge Patricia Martinez, whose complex corporate cases I'd handled for years, approached with judicial authority that immediately commanded the room's attention. Daniel, she said with measured concern that carried legal weight, this service of process is highly irregular for a corporate celebration. What grounds justify this public disclosure? Her question wasn't criticism but professional validation. A federal judge requesting legal justification in front of 500 witnesses who would remember her endorsement of my procedural choices. Your Honor, Elena responded with clinical precision that transformed the elegant ballroom into an impromptu courtroom. The evidence demonstrates systematic matrimonial fraud requiring immediate protective intervention. Connecticut general statutes authorize emergency service when adultery threatens marital assets, particularly when corporate resources have been exploited to facilitate the deception. She gestured toward the comprehensive legal documentation that had just destroyed Rebecca's carefully constructed professional image. Rebecca attempted damage control from her position beside the stage, voice breaking with manufactured emotion, designed to generate sympathy from the corporate audience. This is a personal vendetta using fabricated evidence to destroy professional relationships, she managed, HR personnel supporting her while she struggled to process the comprehensive scope of her exposure. Daniel is exploiting his litigation expertise to humiliate me over normal business networking that he's twisted into something inappropriate. But Dr. Sarah Sterling stepped forward with clinical authority that eliminated any possibility of alternative interpretation. Mrs. Mitchell's communications demonstrate classic patterns of systematic relationship fraud, she announced with medical precision that made every attorney present nod with professional recognition. The 8-month timeline, the recorded confessions about her husband's supposed weakness, the financial manipulation, these represent textbook matrimonial deception conducted with sophisticated psychological planning designed to exploit both personal and corporate resources. That's when Marcus Sterling appeared from the crowd, his characteristic confidence faltering as he processed the scene. Federal judges validating legal procedures, his wife providing clinical testimony against him, and Rebecca's complete emotional breakdown revealing their affair had been systematically exposed before Connecticut's most powerful legal and corporate minds. The creative director who'd helped Rebecca mock my analytical approach was about to face his own systematic destruction. Elena approached Marcus with prosecutorial precision, while a second process server materialized beside her. Marcus Sterling, she announced with legal authority that carried across the silent ballroom. You are served with civil summons for alienation of affection, intentional interference with marriage, and conspiracy to commit systematic fraud. The documentation included evidence of his client manipulation tactics and fraudulent billing practices that would destroy his professional credentials across multiple jurisdictions. The ballroom hummed with controlled professional discussion as corporate attorneys and matrimonial specialists processed the implications of what they were witnessing. Judge Robert Chen, whose family trust I'd successfully defended against predatory litigation, approached with expression mixing professional respect and personal sympathy. Daniel, your evidence presentation demonstrates remarkable procedural restraint under circumstances that would justify far more aggressive legal action, he said with measured approval that would resonate throughout Connecticut's legal community. Sterling Marketing's damage control accelerated as the general counsel briefed Elena on corporate exposure, while HR personnel documented the incident for internal investigation. We'll place Mrs. Mitchell on administrative leave pending comprehensive review, the CEO announced to nearby executives, already calculating the client notifications and board meetings that would follow. We will cooperate fully with any legal proceedings and conduct our own investigation into potential policy violations. Rebecca's desperate appeal came as she processed the complete scope of her professional and personal destruction. She struggled to stand, legs unsteady as 15 years of marriage collapsed under systematic legal scrutiny. Daniel, please, 15 years of marriage must count for something. I'll accept any consequences, sign any agreements. Just don't let this destroy everything we built together professionally. Her voice cracked with genuine terror as she realized her career was evaporating in real time before everyone who mattered in her industry. Rebecca, I replied with measured finality that carried across the silent ballroom, you didn't build anything with me professionally. You conducted systematic adultery while mocking my legal capabilities and exploiting our marriage to facilitate corporate misconduct. You used company resources to fund your affair while discussing my supposed weakness with your lover. This isn't personal destruction, this is systematic accountability for documented fraud. Alina continued with prosecutorial precision, revealing how Rebecca's exploitation of corporate accounts had funded romantic getaways while she researched asset-hiding strategies for divorce proceedings. The evidence shows coordinated matrimonial fraud designed to exploit both marital and corporate resources. She announced with legal authority that made every attorney present understand they were witnessing landmark professional misconduct. As corporate security discreetly positioned themselves near exits and additional process servers appeared with federal documentation, Rebecca made one final appeal that revealed her complete misunderstanding of legal warfare. You wanted to see if I had the balls to confront you, I said with prosecutorial calm as she was escorted toward a side exit. This is what confrontation looks like when it's conducted by someone who understands that courage isn't volume, it's process plus evidence, delivered at the moment of maximum professional vulnerability. The Corporate Excellence Awards had delivered exactly what I'd promised. Comprehensive exposure of matrimonial fraud with legal precision that no amount of emotional manipulation could dispute, witnessed by 500 people who would ensure the truth spread throughout Connecticut's legal and corporate establishment within hours. Rebecca had collapsed because the comfortable, predictable husband had just executed the most devastating matrimonial warfare campaign in Connecticut legal history, transforming her moment of professional triumph into permanent career destruction through systematic legal precision. The aftermath unfolded with the mechanical certainty of a judgment being entered on the docket, each consequence triggering the next with the inevitability of well-drafted legislation taking effect. Within 72 hours of the Metropolitan Club exposure, Alina had emergency orders stamped and served. Temporary restraining orders freezing every joint account, injunctions prohibiting Rebecca from transferring or concealing assets, and preservation writs authorizing immediate forensic imaging of her devices and Sterling Marketing's corporate systems. By midweek, Connecticut Superior Court granted me exclusive possession of the marital residence and appointed a special fiduciary to audit any corporate resources Rebecca had touched with prosecutorial precision. The prenuptial agreement's bad acts clause, once mocked by Rebecca as overlawyered paranoia, activated like a trapdoor. Her adultery and systematic deception converted into forfeiture of alimony, fee shifting in my favor, dollar-for-dollar credits for every improper expenditure, and a presumptive tilt in asset division that transformed settlement from negotiation into arithmetic. Judge Patricia Martinez's order was surgical in its precision. This court finds credible evidence of a systematic scheme to manipulate matrimonial and corporate resources through calculated deception spanning 8 months. Sterling Marketing's damage control accelerated with corporate efficiency that prioritized actuarial risk over moral offense. The board placed Rebecca on immediate administrative leave, suspended her corporate credentials, and retained outside employment counsel to conduct an internal review cataloging policy violations in bullet points a board could digest. The CEO issued measured statements about values and process, while HR quietly circulated memos reminding managers that fraternization, access abuses, and reputational harm are not creative strategies. 3 Fortune 500 clients whose accounts Rebecca had managed terminated contracts immediately, unwilling to associate their brands with documented professional misconduct. Marcus Sterling's destruction followed identical patterns across multiple jurisdictions. Dr. Sarah Sterling, clinical, organized, and finished with years spent gathering evidence, filed her own comprehensive action. Divorce citing adultery and financial misconduct, alienation claims joined with my civil complaint, and professional misconduct referrals that would follow him through every licensing board with the persistence of footnotes. His creative agency's general counsel appeared with termination papers, device surrender demands, and client notifications that would strip him of everything he'd built through systematic manipulation. The divorce proceedings moved like a rocket on rails. Alina's presentation at the temporary orders hearing was a masterclass in surgical advocacy, Timeline exhibits authenticated communications and expense summaries that began as numbers and ended as an undeniable narrative. Opposing counsel attempted familiar deflections, privacy, context, adult missteps rather than legal issues, and collided with our prenuptial language, the court's inherent powers, and a judge who had witnessed the Metropolitan Club confrontation and was not inclined toward proportionality lectures. Discovery arrived punctual and complete, terrorized into compliance by Patricia Chen's forensic methodology. She had constructed a chronology that clicked forward like a metronome, messages to entries, entries to doors, doors to receipts, erasing every space where imagination might breed doubt. The most devastating exhibit was barely legal at all. It was theatrical, a photograph of the summons resting beside Rebecca's glass award on the lectern, timestamped in final. The settlement conference 6 weeks later possessed not the texture of negotiation but the quiet of triage. Eleanor slid our term sheet across the mahogany table and allowed mathematics to accomplish what rhetoric cannot. The bad acts clause, the credits, the accounts already frozen into compliance, all converted. What do you want? Into which of these three options will you initial? Rebecca signed with trembling hands, staring longest at the language, transferring my business interests free and clear of any claim now or in the future. Then came the federal consequences that would follow her for decades. 15 years of fabricated business expenses left audit trails that IRS investigators pursued with methodical precision. Disallowed deductions metastasized into penalties, penalties into interest, interest into liens that created financial obligations extending beyond any reasonable recovery timeline. Federal tax authorities don't negotiate with systematic fraud, they calculate what justice costs and remit the invoice. 6 months later, my professional life had transformed in ways that validated every strategic decision. Rather than damaging my reputation, the systematic exposure of Rebecca's matrimonial fraud demonstrated expertise in detecting sophisticated deception under extreme pressure. Mitchell and Associates expanded dramatically, securing exclusive contracts with Connecticut's wealthiest families, impressed by my methodical approach to protecting assets from insider threats. I developed the Corporate Integrity Protocol, comprehensive provisions including dual authorization distributions, relationship audit triggers, and matrimonial covenants drafted for reality rather than romance. Dr. Sarah Sterling and I built something genuine from systematic destruction's ashes. Our collaboration during the investigation revealed intellectual compatibility and moral alignment transcending typical professional relationships. She possessed unwavering dedication to psychological truth that resonated with my commitment to legal precision. 12 months after Rebecca's destruction, Sarah and I married in a ceremony emphasizing substance over spectacle, two professionals understanding that partnership requires daily choice rather than dramatic performance. The moment of perfect closure came on a spring afternoon when Sarah and I celebrated successful completion of a case, protecting an $80 million family trust from matrimonial fraud. At the Greenwich Country Club, natural daylight streaming through expansive windows, I reviewed case files while enjoying satisfaction that comes from protecting family wealth through systematic prosecution of sophisticated deception. Across the dining room, Rebecca worked as an administrative assistant, her commanding presence replaced by careful movements of someone rebuilding from complete exile. When she noticed us and approached with desperate recognition, I met her gaze with legal indifference, then returned to my documents, the same analytical detachment I brought to case evaluation. Some conversations aren't worth having when court judgments have provided definitive answers about accountability. That evening, Rebecca texted from another new number, paragraphs about mistakes and forgiveness. I replied with our final judgment and one line, "The record speaks." She didn't respond again. There is particular quiet following comprehensive legal victory.